Welcome to the Battlefield Walker channel. I kind of got off my rhythm in publishing videos, but life got really busy there for a while, and I didn't have time to go relic hunting, but that's why I'm here right now. I'm back in Hanover County today, but not on a known battlefield. This place is unknown to us, so we're kind of exploring and scouting today. I'll be hunting with a friend that I haven't known very long. Just met him, as a matter of fact. That's what's cool about the relic hunting community. We're pretty tight-lipped about where we go, but you do get to meet some interesting characters, and every once in a while you meet somebody that you really click with, your style of hunting and what you enjoy doing. I've got a bit more driving to do, and I'm glad you've joined me. Come with me while we do some Civil War relic hunting here in Hanover County, Virginia. I'm the Battlefield Walker. Beautiful bottomland down here, very steep behind me. You can see maybe how steep it is back behind me. Way up on top of the hills where I came down. I found an Indian head penny up on top of the hill. That was as soon as I plugged the machine in. Down here approaching the bottomland, some kind of piece of rusty chain. I've never seen a T-hook just like that. I'm not sure what that is. We'll leave it right there for the time being. Kind of make our way around this bottomland and see what we can come up with. All right, there's my buddy digging over there. Got a little chocolate lab following us around as well. And I got a signal right here. And since I have not found anything Civil War, this is ringing up like either a button or a shotgun shell. So I'm going to guess a shotgun shell since I haven't seen anything Civil War yet. Got a little bit of rain falling. It's not too bad yet, but it's a little damp. Oh, that's a modern buckshot. I got a good signal right here beside the creek. Yeah, that's a good signal. Yippity-doo-dah. So far, we haven't found anything Civil War. Anyway, got a good signal right here beside the creek. By the way, while I'm digging, I'll tell you that a couple of subscribers asked me about if I sold the Battlefield Walker hats, and I told them I did not. Never thought about it, but that I would check on it. So I had a couple of them made, and a couple of subscribers have wanted the hats, and so I'm making a few available. If you're interested, I'll offer these Battlefield Walker hats. They are good quality. They've got a cotton outer shell, and then they got a polyester lining that's supposed to help with the sweat and all that. And they've got a high quality leather adjustable band and all that stuff. But anyway, $25. That includes shipping to the lower 48. So if you're in the US, 25 bucks. If you want a Battlefield Walker hat, I have a few of them. And if they turn out to be popular, I'll have some more made. Alright, out of the hole. Oh man, I just said it didn't sound like aluminum. But there it is. I don't even know what that is, but obviously modern. Alright, we're still hunting along this creek here, and I got a signal right here that does not sound like aluminum. It doesn't sound like iron. It almost sounds like silver, but it's too big to be silver, I think. Let's check it out. Well, this one's got me stumped. Seems to be pretty deep, and it's holding a very solid high tone. Wow. I'm right on it. It's in the bottom of that hole. I'm straight down on it. I sure didn't miss this one. Oh my gosh. I swear this looks like a cannonball. I don't know, boys, but it sure looks like one to me. You see that? Man, I don't know. I haven't found a thing Civil War out here. If that's a cannonball, this has made my day already. Nah, that ain't no cannonball. Doggone it, that's not a cannonball. I swear I believe it's a water line down in the bottom. Yeah, I don't know what this is. That ain't no cannonball, that's for sure. I think it's an elbow. Oh man, I was so excited. Oh shoot, look at this now. That's a teapot. Would you look at that? I think if that's silver. Whoa. But would you look at that now? Well, luckily we're right by the creek where I can clean it. Let's see what this thing looks like. That is not what I was expecting at all. Man, I don't have a clue how old that is or what it's made of. Huh. It sure looks like it's got age on it to me, but I don't know a thing about stuff like this. Got a little scalloped on the handle there. Wow. I'm wondering if this sucker is silver. This land will flood every 20-25 years. So I guess something could have been washed down here. But this is where I am. I want to be really careful with this because it's obviously very worn. I hope some... Oh, it's got something on it. It's got a... What is that? It's got engraving on the front of it, or something embossed. Both sides. Looks like a fern or wheat shock or something like that. Well, we'll figure out what that is, maybe. Well, I just eyeballed one. That would be a really nice cannonball, except that it's a soccer ball. Okay, I don't think anybody was playing soccer down here. Serendipity is defined as unexpectedly finding something when you were looking for something entirely different. Like when Columbus was searching for a trade route to the West Indies when he stubbed his toe on America. There's a story about two brothers who were working on a new formula for fertilizer, and they overshot the mark and developed a very potent weed killer. So this idea of serendipity, unexpectedly finding something that you weren't looking for while you were looking for something else, probably would be a great definition for a lot of the things that we stumble across when we're relic hunting. Certainly that's the case for me today. Hoping to find some Civil War relics, came up completely empty there. But I found that little Indian head penny, and then of course this pewter teapot. But I have a story to tell you about finding what you weren't looking for. And since today I did not find anything I was looking for, I thought this is the perfect time to tell you this story. So sit back and relax, and let me tell you a story that very few people know today. If you know much about the Central Virginia Civil War battlefields, you've heard of Cold Harbor. And there is a national battlefield park established at Cold Harbor that you can go to today and visit the little ranger station out in the front and read about the battle and kind of follow a timeline there. And you can take your car and you can drive through the battlefield and see some remarkably preserved trenches. Very few people know this, but the Cold Harbor Battlefield Park was built and improved and made more accessible to the public during the Great Depression. CCC, or Civilian Conservation Corps, was a program developed by the government where people who couldn't find work anywhere else would be employed by the federal government or the state government or whoever. And they would work on projects and they'd be paid for that, given room and board and be paid. Somebody in state government said, hey, let's get a CCC camp down here to Cold Harbor and let's have them build a nice driving trail through the park where people can drive their cars through and see the trenches and get a feel for the battle without ever even getting out of their cars. My grandfather started out as a dairy farmer, but just before the Great Depression hit, there was an epidemic of something called Bang's disease among dairy cattle. And he lost all of his dairy cattle. He decided to establish a riding academy. He converted his dairy barn into horse stables. He went to the Richmond Polo Club and bought a couple of polo ponies who were getting too old for the field. And he established a little riding academy where well-off people from Richmond could come down to Cold Harbor, and for a small fee, they could rent a horse for the day and they could go riding in the fields and woods of Cold Harbor. Well, when my grandfather heard that the CCC camps were coming down to Cold Harbor, he approached the government officials and he said, I know that at the contact station, that's what they called it, at the contact station at the head of the trail, there will be a guest book. And if you were driving through or stopping there at that little contact station, you would sign your name that you were a visitor. And either the state or the county, I'm not sure how it worked, would get paid a small amount for every visitor that visited the Cold Harbor National Battlefield Park. It gave them incentive to make the place nicer and more attractive. And then also, the money that would be generated from these visitors could be turned into the park to make improvements, pay park rangers, etc. So the more guests they had at these various parks, the more money they had. The more money they had, obviously, the better they could make it. My grandfather said, I'll tell you what you do. If you will build horseback riding trails through the Cold Harbor National Battlefield Park, I have a riding academy that's about a half a mile from there. And I'll bring my riders to ride through the trails on the Cold Harbor National Battlefield. And as they ride through the trails, we'll stop at the contact station and I'll have every rider sign your guest book. And that's going to mean more money for you. And if you build me some nice horseback riding trails, that'll be great for me as well. So the powers that be said, man, that sounds like a win-win. So the Civilian Conservation Corps built horseback riding trails through the Cold Harbor National Battlefield Park. And to this day, those trails exist. Most of them do. When I was a little boy, I rode my horse all through the Cold Harbor National Battlefield Park. You can't ride horses on those trails anymore, but the trails still exist as walking trails. So if you've ever been to the Cold Harbor National Battlefield Park and walked any of those walking trails, you were actually walking on horseback riding trails that were built during the Depression by the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and they were built for my grandfather's riding academy. Now, his name was A.E. Galding Sr. I have a photocopy of his business card. My sister allowed me to copy it and frame it. But I love this business card because it says Cold Harbor Battlefield Park Riding Academy. And then the slogan underneath is just so campy, but it must have really worked. It says, health and pleasure go half and half in our government-built bridle path. And it says located 4.5 miles east of Mechanicsville. And then his name, A.E. Galding, Aubrey Earl Galding, proprietor. Now, where does all this fit in with relic hunting, aside from the obvious connection to the Cold Harbor battlefield area? When I was about 9-10 years old, my dad let me use his machine, and I was relic hunting in the late 1960s. And I was in a corner of our yard right there in Cold Harbor. We had trenches running through the yards. I was in a corner of the yard, and I dug a brass oval plate. And I got so excited, I thought it was a buckle. I was sure it was a buckle. When I cleaned it off, imagine my surprise when I saw my own last name on this thing I thought was a buckle. Cleaned it out a little more, and I saw A.E. Galding. Now, my grandfather died in 1954, and I was born in 1959, so I never knew him. I showed it to my dad, and he said, I know exactly what that is. That was your grandfather's. Here's what I found that day, and of course I've kept it all these years. I'd never let it out of my sight. What I had found was the brass label from one of my grandfather's milk cans. They had those big milk cans back then, and he would ship them to Richmond on a small railroad that existed. Take the cans down and put them on the train, and they would take them to Richmond, and then they would send the empties back. But every farmer had a tag on his milk can with his name on it, and this tag was off of one of my grandfather's milk cans. My dad said that he could remember it. That tag, which was used in the 19-teens, so it was 50 years old when I found it. But I just thought that was the coolest thing. First of all, to know the history of how my grandfather was influential in helping to build those trails, which are still walking trails in Cold Harbor today, but also to find that little tag that came off of his milk cans. One last thing before I close out for the day. My grandfather was A.E. Galding Sr. His oldest son was A.E. Galding Jr., Aubrey Galding. And he started a little store out in Black Creek. And that store served as a hub of community activities throughout the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. That store, of course, was sold. And later on, having passed through a couple of owners, my friends, Mark and Sandra Dawes, bought the place. And going through one of the outbuildings, they found a couple of signs that were used when my uncle was running that store. They generously gave me those signs, and I have them up in my relic room today. So, serendipity is the word for the day. Back in the 1960s, I was looking for a buckle, and I found an old milk can tag. Looking back on it, it means more to me than a buckle would have meant. Today, I was looking for Civil War relics. I didn't find any, but I found this cool old pewter teapot. To be honest, I'd love to know the story and how it ended up where I found it. I'm glad you joined me for this little hunt here on the Battlefield Walker channel. I hope you'll join me again. I also hope you'll consider liking this video and even subscribing for more content like this. If you're new to the channel, there's always a story from the past at the end. A look back, we always call it. So subscribe if you'd like to see the other stories and the other connections and the other old relics from the past and the stuff that we're still finding today. I am the Battlefield Walker, and I hope you'll join me again soon. Until then, be good and say your prayers.